My biggest gripe, though, of this game is the fucking helmets, man. Pick up the helmet. Pick up all the helmets. Pick up the helmets all the time. It's really fucking boring. Hello.
All right. Hello. Welcome to the episode. This month, Simon and I played Asterix and Obelix XXL, and I think it will be my mission today to convince you that it is by far the best game we've played, and I'm going to fight you tooth and nail for this.
Oh, God.
Although I am getting ahead of myself.
I have a few questions about this game.
Fire away.
Because I was quite confused as to why you picked this game. Because it was one of your suggestions,
yeah.
I think. Yeah. So my guess is because of your age, you would have been a kid when this game was released.
Yeah, probably.
I'm guessing that's probably it. Because I've never heard of this game before.
Which is even better.
It's unusual because not that I've played every game, but if it was a decent big game, I should have heard of it at the time. Obviously, if it was something completely obscure, then not likely to.
The reason why I wanted to tackle this is because it is in fact somewhat obscure. It's not a very popular game. It's not a well-known game, but I had very fond memories of playing it. And so I thought that it fits the bill quite well with regards to it's quite old. It came out in 2003. So it fits the theme, even though Simon and I played the Romastered version of the game. But I've looked it up, and actually gameplay-wise, there weren't any changes that would have changed the experience that drastically. And so I thought that it would be a quite good candidate for this.
Yeah, because it was a curious one for me. I was kind of like, what is this game? Obviously, I know what Asterix and Obelix is. I was a big fan of Asterix and Obelix when I was a kid. I have no idea what they use that IP for anymore, but I'm assuming because it's French, and I'm assuming it's probably still sold as a comic book in France at least.
They still make movies. Well, I mean, my wife and I just watched a new film. It must have been at the earliest last year.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Wow.
Yeah, so I want to introduce what this game is for the people who have not heard of it, seen it, played it, as such as yourself. I think good way of summing it up, it is a third-person action-adventure game where a player takes on the role of Asterix and Obelix in their quest to save their neighbors from their village, because in the beginning of the game, our heroes were on a hunt, and essentially Roman legions kidnapped everyone.
Get a fix! By two tarties, I'm glad to see you, but where are all our village folk? Where is our chief? Vital statistics? What's happened here? All our houses are on fire!
The Romans arrived by complete surprise. Oh, it was a tough fight. Then they divided us into separate cages. Caesar himself was here.
The game is structured in 6 chapters, and at the end of each chapter, you end up saving an important character from the comics. Every biome has the same structure where you go through a series of levels, and every level is going to be essentially either a combat encounter where you're hard locked, having to defeat a certain amount of enemies because the trigger to progress is locked, or there's a puzzle that you need to solve that may involve some amount of platforming as well. So that, I think, is like a very high-level summary. And before we go any further, I'd like you to give me just your raw emotion.
I warmed to it. I warmed to it. That's probably my most recent emotion of this game. I warmed to it.
Okay.
It was a slow burn, I think, until I actually did warm to it. I think by stage 2 was pretty awful. Or at least my experience of it was. Not the level design or the puzzles weren't awful. It was just my experience of the game at large and what I was expecting for how it would pan out. But it is, I mean, try to summarize very briefly. It's fun. It's simplistic fun, but it has some depth to it too, in its combat, at least, which is half of what the game is. It's kind of simple fun that sort of grew on me, I guess, is probably the briefest way I can describe it.
Yeah, and I think it's fair enough. And I'm not surprised that you'd say it like that exactly. I think, again, before we go into the specifics, Simon and I are very different players, I think, with regards to the kinds of games that we most enjoy playing. There's a certain amount of overlap.
Yeah.
But I play, I think, a lot more of action genre of games, while Simon plays a lot more of tactical games.
Yes.
And then there's a certain amount of overlap where we would sometimes come together, but we are different in that aspect.
Yes.
So that's one thing that I wanted to clarify. And then the next thing that I wanted to say to you is that my thesis today will be that the reason why I say that this game is by far the best we've played on the series so far is because it's the most coherent.
Right.
All of the things that we're going to talk about today, combat, level design, puzzles and platforming, is simple, is well executed, and it fits together well, which wasn't the case before.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I feel like when we talked about Thief, when we talked about Max Payne, when we talked about Alice, there was always something that's like, oh, this really is weird and not fitting.
In terms of players understanding what they need to do, when you say coherent, and consistently reinforcing those mechanics.
Yes.
Right. I think that's what you're trying to say. Or at least that's how I interpreted it as.
Yes.
It's probably right, and partly due to its simplicity as well. But yeah, it's definitely, yeah, I think you're right. It is that. It is coherent, I guess.
And so I guess, I mean, a few subjects that I think we should and can and should talk about, which is like the overall, I mean, obviously combat is a big part of the game. Puzzles, level design, and platforming is essentially a second pillar of gameplay. And I'm interested in your thoughts on the game structure and progression as well. But if we start at the combat, I want to hear your experience with the combat. And I'm curious, because you mentioned depth, and I think there's a lot of depth to the combat, surprisingly, a lot of depth to the combat of the game, especially in the context of, again, it being released in 2003. So I wonder, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I think it's a game that masks itself as a button masher, but isn't. And that's actually potentially problematic for people who don't understand that or aren't willing to understand that, or it's potentially problematic for first impressions. And I think that's why I said stage 2 for me was particularly frustrating, because stage 1 is very short.
Yes.
And it's very easy.
Yes.
And then you think after stage 1, you're like, well, this is okay, cool. I'm just going to do this for the rest of the game. Probably get through this pretty quickly. And then you hit stage 2. And it's not like that at all. So I had some initial issues with stuff like, I'm going to go into this, not the combo I'll go into later. There's the camera and controller support and stuff like that. But the combat is at least, because I'm looking at my notes now here,
Yeah.
the combat is satisfying. Now, at the early stages, you don't have any of these combos that you use, but you still have a bunch of mechanics that you can use.
Yes.
So you still get the ability to use dogmatics, for example, to knock out a Roman or just make him put his guard down. You can go beat him up. You still have the opportunity to grab a Roman and swing him around if he's taken, like, I think if he's taken one hit, if he's sort of stunned, basically. This is essentially what dogmatics does. He stuns them as well.
Dogmatics knocks the weapon out of their hands.
Right. And then you have the shove move.
Yeah.
I kind of found these controls by accident, because the thing is, it doesn't tell you how to do any of this stuff, really. There was a tutorial, but it was just a case of, I thought it was going to be a tutorial level, but it wasn't, I don't think. It's been a while since I actually played this. It's not a tutorial level. It just shows you a bunch of stuff to do. So you don't get to really try it out. So initially, you're just using the light attack and you're beating up Romans. And there's this great bit at the start of the game where you see the globe, the world, and you see Romans flying off into space.
Yeah.
And then you realize when you beat them up, when they're flying off, that's exactly what you're doing. You're shooting them off into space because you're hitting them so hard. And the one thing that did strike me about this, and this is related to the combat, but it is about the art and animation of the combat, is how on point it was for Asterix and Obelix, right? Is absolutely on point. This is one of the good points I'm going to make about it. The animation of the enemies when they get hit and when they die, that sort of squash and stretch that they do, right, when they get hit, it's just like the cartoons. And the art style is obviously, like, they're very well done. They look exactly like, and for something that was a PS2 game, it was quite impressive. But in terms of, like, the general mechanics of the combat, I sort of discovered the grab Roman thing by accident, and then started swinging Romans around, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, this looks kind of easy, right? At first, this makes it super easy, and why would I even need to use this? And then with the dogmatics stun attack, I was thinking, why do I need to use this? Until you actually come across, like, a more powerful enemy. But then it's difficult to target a specific enemy to use if you're in the middle of a fight with a bunch of other people. So I found myself sort of, I got stuck on stage 2 because because I thought I could button mash, and I couldn't really. Because there's something about the combat that did actually kind of frustrate me, and I get that it's part of the mechanics, is your movement gets stopped when you're in the middle of attacking. So you have to move up to the Roman and then start hitting the attack. You can't hit the attack button and then start moving towards him. He'll stop. He won't move forward. So you have to move. And then when there's a crowd of them, you want to hit one, and then you want to keep, like, going and keep going through and keep hitting them. But you kind of have to stop and move forward to hit them. And that felt a bit disjointed and jarring, to be honest, throughout the whole playthrough. But from must have been stage 3 or 4, I did kind of understand more about what was going on. I spent a lot of time jumping out of the way, and I didn't use the shove very much, really. Sometimes I did, but because I used it I was just like, okay, I'm in a bit of a sticky situation. I'm just going to shove in any direction. And sometimes I would hit a Roman, and I would take myself out of the fight, and so I could beat them up and then go back in, And then, the combos were good, but some of them seemed a bit one or two of them seemed a bit useless. Like the one where you pick up a Roman and smack him around. I was like, why?
Yeah.
Why is this a thing? Because I can already do that with why? Like, why is that a thing? But then I kind of realized later, I think that you can't do that on the heavier guys, but you can use the combo on the heavier guys. So maybe that's its purpose. I don't even know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me nerd out and then give you my take on the combat and its depth and complexity. So, I guess let's start step by step. The first move that you have at your disposal is the basic attack, which is like a very quick like jab, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And you hit a Roman. And by the way, immediately, if you remember when we talked about Alice, and we talked about how it was impossible to evade enemy attacks.
Yeah.
In this game, you hit an enemy and they are staggered, and so they are not attacking you, which immediately solves that problem.
Well, it's not just that as well. It's the fact that they show you, but yeah.
And so, however, your basic attacks don't really do a lot of damage, and the whole idea is that you have this combo meter, and this is, and I'm mostly explaining for the ladies and gentlemen who are listening and or watching. And the point is that you build a combo meter using your basic attacks, and then combos are these more powerful moves that we're going to talk about in a second. And in this game, you fight dozens, hundreds, and in certain moments, thousands of enemies. I mean, not at the same time because they come in waves, but you fight a lot of enemies, which obviously can be problematic because they'll just swarm you in and you'll be surrounded by enemies. And so if you just try and attack them, you'll die. What you have at your disposal is a grab attack that we mentioned, where you pick up the Roman and you use him as like, you do this when you find a helicopter attack, when you hit everyone around you and you knock and you stagger everyone around you. However, this grab attack basically doesn't build your combo meter. So it's a good tool in the early game. When you get surrounded by enemies, you can just grab them, and this way you stagger everyone around you, so you're not immediately ganged and killed. But you're not really going to build your combo meter. So in the later stages of the game, when you have an objective to kill like 1,000 enemies, that's not going to really work. So what the second thing that you can do is a dash or shove attack that shoves the enemies in front of you. And you can also, if you line up multiple enemies, you will shove multiple enemies.
What? I didn't even know that.
Yep. So what you do, you get a lot of enemies in, you get surrounded, you shove a few enemies, and when you have a couple of enemies close together, you hit them both, or you hit all of them, and then your combo meter is bumped for every enemy you hit. So you can shove a couple of enemies, build the combo meter, and then by the time the other enemies rejoin, you can use the combo to dispose of them.
But you don't get it.
So that's cool.
You don't get a combo in the early game, though, right? That's the thing. You don't get them.
The first combo you buy at the end of Gold Village.
Which is the first combo?
The one where you pick up an enemy and then you slam them into the ground, and you do an AoE attack that deals damage and also disarms everyone in the area.
Did I pick that up at the end of the first level? Because I thought I bought it from the shop.
You buy it from the shop at the end of the first level when you save the druid.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Or at least you have the opportunity to buy it there if you have enough currency to do it. So this is a very nice systemic combat where you have the slight attack and you use it to build up combos, which are these powerful moves that you use to dispose of large quantities of enemies at a time. And then whilst you don't have your combo meter built yet, you can either do the grab attack or you can push enemies around, build the combo meter, and then rejoin the fight effectively. And as if all of that wasn't enough, and I mean, and also there's dogmatics who can disarm enemies. And as if all of that wasn't enough, you have two playable characters, Asterix and Obelix, and the game you don't get a choice,
No.
really. The game just puts you in control of certain character at a certain part of the level. However, they are vastly different in combat because Obelix deals more damage. Obelix builds up combo meter way quicker. Obelix has way greater reach than Asterix does, and you actually notice it a lot. However, Obelix cannot perform the combo where you go underground, the way where you push rocks from. I don't think Obelix can do that, and that is actually quite a big. You feel it in mid game when that's the most powerful combo you have. So basically, it's Greece and half of Helvetia. You actually notice that quite substantially. So that was like a nerd out on the combat.
I wish this stuff was more explained. Oh, it was hinted at least. I mean, I know some of it is obvious and some of it is stuff that that they want to let players discover for themselves. And it was made 21 years ago. Things were different. But I do wish some of this stuff was more explained. And it's kind of cool. I barely used the combos.
What?
Like, I barely used them.
No way.
Like, I mean, like, I was like, they were rubbish. I was kind of like, they weren't rubbish, obviously, but they weren't actually rubbish from what you've just said. But that one where you do stuff out of the ground, the hills that come out of the ground, the rocks that come out of the ground.
Yeah.
I think I probably used that 4 times in the entire game. Like, I didn't even know how to use it. I was like, he goes underground, and then some stuff happens. The first a couple of times I did it, it kind of was like, oh, some rocks go out of the ground, and then it kind of stuns a couple of people. But I didn't know I was supposed to do anything afterwards, or just let the combo do it itself, or what.
You have to keep pressing the button.
That is probably it, because it's like there's the way that they show the combos was, A plus X plus B, and then and then an extra bit at the end that said X plus X. And I was like, what does that even mean? I don't even know what that means. What does it mean? But clearly it was obviously...
Because that combo can dispose of like 20 enemies at once.
That's probably what I was doing wrong, because I didn't know how to use that combo properly. Because I was like... So I just never bothered using it half the time. And the one that you slammed the Roman around, I just barely used that because I was like, why? I'll just pick them up with Y or something.
So so the first combo you buy is the one that is like in a double WE fashion. You grab your enemy and you jump high in the air, and then you slam them in the ground.
Basically, that one was actually useful, I figured, in the end, because it stuns people around, because you can get rid of one big enemy in one go, and then you can also stun.
And you not just stun the enemies, but you also disarm them, which is really important.
Right, but then do they have a cooldown? They must have a cooldown where
they do have a cooldown, but I haven't timed it, but it's substantial.
Right, yeah.
So that's the first combo. The second combo is the one where, as you said, you pick up the Roman and you slam them in the ground, and it deals more damage in a sense that for every hit you kill, quotation, you dispose of the enemy. But it wasn't my favorite. Then the next one is the one when you go underground, which you didn't figure out. Let's say that.
Yeah.
Have you purchased the tornado combo?
So I did purchase tornado, and it was then when I did that combo, I was like, this is brilliant. This is great, because I was just using that for everything. Because that final stage, stage 6, you have to defeat 800. 1,000 or something of them is crazy.
The most is 1,500.
Literally 1,000 Romans, or 50, whatever it was. But I had the combos, so I was kind of like, okay, that's brilliant. Just keep doing that. Just keep hitting them and keep doing that. But I kept running out of lives and dying. And I did that. I did that many, many times. Because I didn't know. Yeah, my problem with that basically is that I didn't know how that combat worked at all. Right, I didn't know how some of those combos work. Clearly, the one where you have mountains coming out of the ground, I didn't know how that worked, obviously. And some of the others, it wasn't clear what their purpose was. But I could have looked up a guide or something like that.
Yeah. Well, And I think there's something to be said about the fact that you don't immediately go towards these kinds of games, and I basically made you play this game. I think the fact that maybe you didn't pick up on the things the same way I did is fair.
But the combat, to be fair though, the combat wasn't my biggest gripe with the game. In fact, it's probably my smallest gripe with it. In fact, I thought the combat was good. The frustrating side of the combat I got was from that whole thing about not being able to like move through combat while you're attacking. That was probably my biggest gripe, because I would stand there and I didn't know when I was in range as well. So and everything's a split-second decision. So
yes,
you have to sort of run up to them, make sure you're at the right distance, then start attacking. And then you realize you're out of range, but you can't keep moving. You have to let go of the attack button, move in again, and then start attacking. So that was probably my biggest gripe with it, with the combat, the biggest frustration I had with it.
However, you're not wrong when you say that can be frustrating. However, to defend the game, I think there's a bit of skill issue. because right? So as we established, Obelix has way bigger reach, so you don't run out into this problem. Asterix has a short reach, so you do run into this problem. And the way I figured it out, because I had that as well, but I figured it out, if you just mash the attack button, at some point, basically what you described is going to happen is that you will kill the enemies that are in the immediate vicinity, and then you won't reach the enemy that's right next to you, and they're going to hit you.
Yeah.
But if you go slower and you do you hold the input button and you do like attack, split second pause, attack, split second pause, Asterix gonna do a strike, take a step, do a strike, and you can basically go around this way.
I think this comes back to the whole thing of it being under this mask of looking like a button masher, and because it's quite simple, it's also Asterix and Obelix. It's more of a childlike game. The way the animations work, you do these mass attacks. I mean, that's really satisfying to me when you attack a big group of enemies and you're whacking them all at the same time, and you have this great animation, and then they're all flying off, and it feels like a game where you're almost supposed to be just tunneling and powering through everything, like a shmup or something, right? But it's not actually like that. It's at the it's funny because it's almost, so the irony of it is that it's actually more tactical than that, right? Which is its strong point, right? But in my case, it partly became its weak point, because I just didn't understand initially that that's what it was supposed to be. But I think you're absolutely right. If I did take it slower, then that's what would have happened. And I did start to do that by stage 3 or 4, probably. Certainly by stage 4. I got it, but I did understand it a bit better. You had to kind of be a bit more thoughtful about those combat encounters. But yeah, maybe it just threw me because thematically, Asterix and Obelix is a game about pummeling lots of Romans very, very easily, right? And the magic potion, whenever you had magic potion in the levels, that felt great because you would just power through. And so the combat was really, really satisfying. I think you're right about the skill issue. But I think if I went back and if there were hints scattered throughout the game, if there were hints on death screens, for example, right, or loading screens, maybe that would have helped, because often it was just buy 2 charters, you almost made it, try again.
Okay, I think we'll close the page on combat for now, at least.
Yeah, we probably should, because we've spent long enough.
And I'd like to talk about puzzles. And I just want to set again the scene for people who haven't played the game first. Puzzles in this game are again quite simplistic in their nature. Essentially, it's either the case that you need to carry a torch before the fire runs out and light a black powder filled keg, and it's going to explode and unblock the path.
Uh-huh.
And so that's one category of puzzles. The second category of puzzles has to do with like finding levers and buttons that you need to press or hit, and it's just going to move some sort of a mechanism that's going to unblock the path. And I made a note after Normandy saying that it was satisfying because it having those sections that weren't just purely combat means that there is the sense of adventure, because you enter a new level and you don't immediately know what's going to happen, because you have an idea, because again, it's one of the few things, but there is a little bit of the spirit of adventure because you don't actually know in advance what's going to happen. And I made a note saying that it's interesting how this evolves throughout the game. And I let you tell me what you think before I answer that question.
I think the puzzles were pretty solid. I think they were balanced quite well. There were small moments, I think, where I got a bit frustrated, like, what the hell do I do here? But these weren't like moments that felt particularly taxing. It's not a LucasArts point and click adventure, right? Like some kind of madcap solution to the puzzle. I think they were pretty solid. It was a kind of, you would take a few minutes to figure it out, and then you would figure it out.
Yep.
And the timing on that was quite good. I would probably mark it down for its repetition.
Okay.
But I'm going to mark the game down for its repetition in other aspects as well.
Right.
As we go on.
All right.
But I would probably criticize the puzzles for their repetition somewhat, in terms of, it's like you just said, it's either lighting a black powder keg. The lighting a black powder keg seemed to be the most prolific of them. But there were others, the ones where Asterix has to stand on some kind of platform and then has to go over and move, and that kind of stuff felt good, because that actually felt like do you ever play Lost Vikings?
I don't think so, no.
One of the first games that Blizzard made, pretty sure they made it before Warcraft 1. Right?
Okay.
So they made it a long time ago, and the idea is kind of a rock paper scissors, where you have 3 Vikings and they each have different strengths, but they're also somewhat weaknesses, right, in them as well, and you use them to solve various puzzles. And this makes sense with Asterix and Obelix, except there was just 2 of them. And in a way, it would be kind of cool to have Dogmatics involved in the puzzle as well, because he's also a character, but he was never, as far as I know, he's never involved in any of the puzzles.
No.
But having, the idea that Obelix can't get through small spaces, but Asterix can, but Obelix can break through big tough walls and Asterix can't, and gives it that rock paper scissors element to it that I thought was quite nice. And I thought that was kind of neat, and everything fits nicely sort of thematically in as well with the Asterix and Obelix universe. So I thought they were pretty solid. I didn't really have any complaints about the puzzles, to be honest. Like I said, there were just some moments where I got slightly frustrated, but it's all pretty simple, right?
Yep.
The whole game is pretty simple. And if you're looking for deep puzzle solving, this is not your game, really. If you're looking for deep anything, it's not your game, but I might caveat that with combat, actually, because I do think that, after our discussion, and actually once I got to stage 4 or 5, the combat was deeper than I thought it was. But yeah, it's fine. It's kind of age appropriate, I guess, because this is Asterix and Obelix feels like it is a kid's game.
I think it is. I think it was supposed to be,
and it's made in that era that just feels very Crash Bandicoot. Sort of very sort of, I don't know, Jack and Daxter maybe, I don't know, right? That sort of light-hearted puzzle with a third-person character that's some kind of icon, right? That's what Asterix and Obelix is.
I'd like to call out a couple of things on the puzzle side. I think what made me really happy, because, and this is again in reference to the other game that, pretty much every game that we talked about, except of Witcher doesn't have any sort of platforming. However, platforming in this game is very satisfying. The controls mid-air and the jumping controls are actually, again, it's not rocket science. It's not like there's some crazy Celeste-like mechanics, but it's just well executed jump and double jump. And whenever you need to like jump over a pit or jump over an obstacle, you can actually do it fairly easily. And I never was frustrated by platforming.
Yeah, I think thinking about it, I think that's probably the same for me. And I'm someone who barely plays any platformers as well. But then again, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't actually matter whether you play a lot of platformers or not. It's that the quality in it is about understanding where is your character going to be at any point in time when you push that input, right? And do you understand where it is? I mean, there were some points where it was problematic, particularly in boss levels, where the camera would swing around to some god awful position, and you would be like, why is the camera going this way? And then you would fall off into a lava pit. Stage 5 boss, by the way, which I nearly punched the screen because of that. At work as well. Yeah, some people watching me. It's funny because there's points where you just couldn't see the lava pit and you couldn't see where you were jumping on, but that's because you couldn't see where you were jumping on. So, but that's there were camera problems with the things that most annoyed me about some of the platforming. I wasn't very good though at the challenges. In fact, I barely did any of the challenges.
I just ignored the challenges.
I couldn't be bothered with them. I just couldn't be bothered. I just thought I just want to get through the game anyway.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of essentially snowboarding, right?
Yeah.
Sliding down hills and collecting helmets.
Yeah.
And I wasn't particularly good at that. So I found those sections, the platforming on those sections, frustrating and difficult, but the general platforming, it was fine. It was good. I mean, it wasn't, like you said, I didn't feel frustrated by a jump, like a land after a jump, or not expecting the character to be somewhere, that I thought they would be after jumping, so it was fine.
And that segues actually nicely into the next thing that I wanted to discuss, which is boss fights. I think that this is the right type of a boss encounter for this kind of game, because it kind of stands in between of, it's not completely action skill based, and it's not completely just a weird puzzle that you need to solve. It's sort of something in between. The first boss encounter, or rather I should say, every boss encounter is essentially an engine of war that is this big machine that you need to destroy, which you do by performing this sequence of actions where first Asterix needs to get on top of it and to press the button that's gonna essentially expose weak points, and then Obelix needs to go in and actually strike those weak points. And every new boss encounter adds a new obstacle on top of it, be it new enemies or just more things that you need to do, like more buttons to press, things like that. And I think that because the combat of this game is designed around fighting hundreds of enemies, if we were to just have like a tough Roman guy, it just wouldn't have really worked, because the combat is not really designed around one-on-one fights. Or if you just had some weird puzzle that's more complicated, I think that would have felt out of place. So I think this concept of a boss encounter is the right one for this game. What do you think?
I think the mechanics of the boss were fine. I got it. What I didn't like about the boss is it's the same boss like every single, like at the end of every, I know it's not, you don't defeat it in the same way exactly, but it's still almost the same way, right? It still looks exactly the same. You still gotta break off the like nuts that hold on the shredding pieces.
Yeah.
You still have to find a way of stunning it. I mean, towards the end, stage 4 and 5, I think you had to shoot a cannon at the top section to stun it.
Yeah.
And then go down, and so it was just the same boss. I found it quite uninspiring because I was expecting something quite different. I was expecting, you know, a super hard Roman general or something like that, right? Or something. I mean, it was fine the first time, but then the second time I thought, is this right? They're doing like the same boss again? But the mechanics were fine and they were doable. But my problem with it was just the repetition, because it felt like the bosses, to be honest, felt like a sort of last minute rush almost to get it in. Because if it wasn't, I don't know why they just decided to go with the same war machine after every stage. I would have thought it'd be something different every time. Like maybe it would be a giant boat or something in Helvetia, or maybe it would have been, like I said, like a Roman general at the end of, maybe it would have been some pharaoh at the end of Egypt or something, right? You know, it would have been something like that.
I'm gonna defend the game a little bit.
Right.
because I mean, yes, technically it is the same machine that you need to defeat. However, they crank up the intensity quite a bit from one boss fight to another. So the one I described originally is the boss fight at the end of Normandy, and then in Egypt, the war machine attacks you a lot more viciously, you could say. It's shooting a lot more cannonballs towards you.
Uh-huh.
And then in Helvetia, there is this button that you need to press with the, almost like an arbalest, but again, you're shooting cannonballs.
Huh.
And then the machine is shooting you. So there's there's additional flavor on top of that. And then in Egypt, there are also troops that come out that you need to defeat, and there are additional mechanisms that you need to engage with to open the button that you then need to shoot so that it opens up the thing that Asterix can jump on. And then in Rome, there's 2 of them. Obviously, if they had complete different encounters, wouldn't it have been better? Yes, definitely.
Yeah. I'm not saying they are exactly the same encounters. That would be really bad if you just copy pasted the same encounter. And I don't know whether, I mean, up in the intensity, yeah, it's going to be more challenging, but it's still the same. You still have to go in, you still have to unscrew the nuts from each side to destroy the thing finally. You have to find a way of stunning it somehow so you can do that, right? I think it's in the 3rd level where Asterix has to get up on the little winch, and then he drops down onto the middle of it, and then Obelix goes around and jumps over and gets into it. The first time that happened, that was cool. Like it was an interesting. It was weird though, because that for the first time you see that boss, it chases you down a street.
That's the second time.
And you have to. Is it the second time? It chases you down a street, and you have to run away. And I don't know whether I broke the game or bugged it out, because somehow it ran past me, and I thought it was supposed to have killed me, so I had to run after it.
What?
Yeah, you'll see. I've got it all on video.
Oh wow, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've got it all on video. So I thought, is this game bugged out or something? I did something really weird where I just missed some collision or something. And then I got there and I thought, and I wasn't sure, because I wasn't sure if I'd broken the game, that I had to restart. I really hoped I hadn't had to restart, but I didn't in the end. That was my issue with it, with the bosses, is they were kind of uninspiring when you saw the same thing. And the weirdness of that machine, and maybe I just haven't read Asterix and Obelix in a long time, because I don't remember things about war machines, but that struck me as slightly off when you got this huge, almost piece of technology that didn't look like it okay, I know it's a cartoon and everything, but piece of technology with magic potion, right?
Yeah.
That didn't come from Roman times at all, like a huge lawnmower. I thought was quite odd, but on thematic side, I'll give it a pass on that one. But it was, for me, that was the gripe, was that I was expecting something different with the boss. Because once you get once you get past stage 4 and you realize that's the same boss, especially when you get to stage 5 and you think it's the same boss, you think, it's gonna be the same boss again, surely, right? Stage 6.
Well, it's not. It's 2 of them.
It's 2 of them. I mean, yeah, this is the thing. Again, I thought at least maybe you would fight Caesar or something, or maybe you would fight in a gladiatorial arena.
You do fight in a gladiatorial arena because Caesar tries, before the boss encounter, because Caesar is trying to trap you, and then you have to defeat 1,500 Romans.
Right. But without my expectation would be without the huge war machine.
Yes, I would have, of course. So you're not wrong. You're not wrong in what you're saying. It is at its core the same encounter that is just made more difficult. I think what I was thinking is that and this is not me as a player talking, this is me as a game developer talking. I really like to see teams make simple games that reuse the same mechanics in different contexts and different scenarios.
Right.
I think it's just clever utilization of your work, essentially, and it's a great idea a great way to, you can end up doing less various features but having them made to a higher quality standard. And I was just really happy to see that they've utilized some of these things that you would see throughout the game in various puzzles, also use them in boss encounters, but in a different way.
But it reinforces. I mean, I think that's fine. You know, if you want to reinforce a mechanic, or you want to teach a mechanic in some other part of the game that is then used in a more difficult encounter, for example, that does make sense. That is good design, I think. And if you can use current mechanics, if you can use the same mechanic in some kind of different way in a different encounter, then that works. Then that's good, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Talk to me. What else do you have? Because I feel like there are still things that you didn't talk about.
I tell you what, though, let's start with the good stuff.
Okay.
For me, the good stuff was the art and animation was spot on.
Yes.
Like absolutely spot on. It was evocative of what you kind of expect. If someone described to you a third-person linear game about Asterix and Obelix, that's kind of the scene you would imagine in your head, right? Asterix looks like Asterix, Obelix looks like Obelix, right? Obviously, that's a low bar to set. But the conceit of the game and the concept was backed up by the art and animation, the sort of idea of hordes of Romans, the animation where, I've mentioned it earlier, where the Romans sort of squash and stretch upwards, and it feels like something out of the comic books, right? I thought that was really, really good. Just the way they move when they jump, when you jump on those platforms and they go flying into the air, and the hats are flying slightly up into the air and that kind of thing. And Dogmatics is great, you know, with his scampering around, and some of the supporting characters as well are pretty good. Getafix the Bard, who's basically just a save point, and Cacophonix, and that you meet at the end of stage 5. All that kind of stuff is great. The other thing was the magic potion. The idea of magic potion everything fits in really nicely, like thematically fits in. I've used that word so many times now, but it fits in really nicely with the game.
Yeah.
You do feel really, really powerful. That's the whole point, the whole idea behind Asterix and Obelix.
Yeah. And I thought that the introduction of the magic potion was great. It's the first big arena that has a lot of enemies that you need to defeat, and it has a magic potion, and you just feel really powerful.
My biggest gripe though of this game is the fucking helmets, man. That is a chore, an absolute chore. I was just like, what? There's so many of them. And first of all, I didn't know what they did. You start the game and he tells you, go and collect so many helmets for me.
Yep.
I'll let you through this door.
Yep.
Fine, whatever. But then they're everywhere and you keep collecting them and there's a counter there. And I thought,
Yep.
what do I even do? I don't even know what I do with these. And then you're supposed to get golden, which by the way, I never got all the golden laurels in each level.
I haven't bothered.
I mean, but again, the problem was I didn't know what they did. And I think I looked it up, but I think they give you a cosmetic.
It's basically for the premium trophy.
I'm not going to bother with that. I didn't know what the helmets did. And it just wasn't fun to collect them. It was a chore.
But you don't need to collect them all.
But imagine if you're the kind of person, I mean, I'm not OCD, but if you were OCD about it,
Yeah.
like, and maybe a little bit OCD about it, and you would feel like you have to collect all of them. And then they had a combo on them where you would sort of go, oh, now I have to, now not only is it a chore, but now I have to worry about the fact that there's a combo somewhere and I have to figure out that I've got to pick it up. And then it realized it's only time limited on the combo.
Yeah.
But then I realized later they stack. The combos stack.
Yes.
So
they do.
they stack on, so you can get a 10 and then another 3 and a 3, and you suddenly it's 16 times the amount of helmets. And then you got to go, well, I mean, some of the times the combo is in some hard to reach place, and you've got to go and grab that and then quickly figure out to get, where to get the other helmets from. Or you might have smashed a bunch of crates with helmets in already, and then you see a 10 times combo behind you, and you're like, well, what was the point? I just but it was just so like, the game just seemed so focused on, like, half of it just seemed to be like, pick up the helmets, just pick up the helmets all the time, just pick up all the helmets, like, and it was just such a chore, and it's so, I want to say, I was about to say early 2000s gameplay, but really it's early 90s gameplay, right? If you think about Sonic and collecting all of the rings in Sonic, right?
Yeah.
And you just it feels like you're constantly collecting these things, all of these rings all the time, right? And it's the same like that with for helmets. There's just crates everywhere, and you just feel like you have to just smash them all.
But you don't.
You don't. But then you realize, I only realized maybe at the end of stage 2 that I needed them for combos. I was like, oh man, I need them for combos. Now I definitely need to do them. Now I definitely need to pick them up because I'm kind of crap at the game. So if I don't pick them up, then I'm at more of a disadvantage. But it's really fucking boring to pick them up. It was just so boring. I almost felt like if they just got rid of the helmets and just streamlined the whole combo thing in a different way, in some kind of method where it would have been, choose a combo at the end or something, or like some kind of...
Well, I mean, you're not wrong, obviously. You're not wrong, and I do not disagree. However, I will defend the game by saying that A, you don't actually need to gather them all. I didn't, and I was able to have enough currency to buy all of the combos in the middle of the game, where I didn't even have them available.
That's insane. That's insane because I only got the Twister combo in stage 5, and I didn't get the Twister fusion until... Well, I didn't get the Twister fusion at all, so I didn't get it.
Okay.
So I got all of them bar that one, Twister fusion combo.
Right.
But my problem with that is that if you don't need to collect them all, why are they there?
I would... So, and again, I agree. And I think if it was a modern game, I would really raise my eyebrow.
Yeah.
But because
it's of this time,
it is an early... I mean, it's a game made in 2002, effectively.
I mean, this is when I mentioned Crash Bandicoot, right? You're picking up all the things with Crash Bandicoot, and you're just constantly picking up this stuff.
The apples.
The apples, that's it, right? I can't remember what it was now.
So I think it's in the context of its time. I don't think that it's
In the context of its time, I guess I'll give it a sort of a pass for the fact that A, it's a product of its time, and B, it's also a kids game, and that's the kind of thing that kids normally do. Collect all of the things. It's fun to collect all of the things.
right.
Whatever. It's a more simplistic thing to do, collecting the things. Fine. I get it. Right.
Yeah.
But that was my biggest, because I mean, maybe if I wasn't on the clock as much with this game, like we are with all of these games,
Yeah.
maybe I wouldn't have minded it. Maybe I would have just gone, I don't know, whatever. Because then this is the other thing about the challenges, where I just didn't bother with the challenges because they give you helmets, and I can't be bothered to do any of them.
Yeah. And I don't remember if I looked it up what challenges actually do at the beginning of the game. And then I realized that essentially it's only tied to like 100% completion of the game, which I do not care about in the fight. And so I just basically ignored it. Like it's there to have something else for the 100% trophy, and I'm not gonna judge if that's the best way to do a 100% trophy or not. Don't really do these things. I only did it once for Dark Souls, so I'm not the person to really judge on that. I just ignored all of it.
Yeah.
All of the sequences when you go down the mountain, the sequences when you're in the boats and Obelix pushes the boat.
And you can see probably from some of the video, I missed like half of them as well.
Same. I didn't even try. My objective was not die.
Because the thing is, you can try again. And I think the first time I tried again, almost thinking, I think that I had to try again, but I didn't. I could just carry on and go forward, But yeah, I mean, that is by far and away my biggest gripe with the game is the fucking helmets. But yeah, I mean, and there are some weird gripes that I have with. Oh, the other one was actually the music. I think in because when you switch to the original graphics, because this is the remastered version, the music is slightly different.
Yes.
But definitely in the remastered version, I don't know why they decided that some kind of dance track would be appropriate for combat. Because it's just like the weirdest thing ever. It's like,
yeah, I know what you mean.
You do, and you're like, is this supposed to be Asterix and Obelix? Like, I don't know.
Well, maybe it's like the songs that they play at the village during like festivities.
It sounded like I was in a club at 2 a.m. or something. I didn't feel like I was fighting Rome, and it was just
okay.
It was kind of annoying because I like good music in games, and when it fits the game really well. But the funny thing is mostly the combat music, because the rest of the music was mostly fine. It's a little repetitive. But the combat music for me just didn't make any sense, apart from the fact that it was upbeat.
Yes.
And it was, I don't know, it was more action oriented, I guess. Yep. But it didn't really feel like a proper combat track. I think in order of things that I was most annoyed with, helmets at the top, by far. Music was not in the middle, a bit further down, because I could kind of ignore it in a way. And when you switch to original graphics, it was slightly different.
Yes.
The spy kind of annoyed me, but he was sort of...
The what?
The spy, the character of the spy.
Oh.
But just because he was very simple and obvious all the time, I was like, just get on with it, dude. Like, I know...
Well, I think that's the character from the comics, though.
Right, yeah, right. So there were some characters that I couldn't either had forgotten about or didn't know about. I found odd when you went to the shop and the guy who runs the shop is for some reason a British World War II fighter pilot.
Hello there. come see me anytime you like. See you again.
Right, he's dressed in like a
Yeah.
suede sheepskin jacket with a big handlebar mustache. He's like, "Hello there.
Yeah.
What? Well, let's see what we've got in stock." And it's like, what era are you from, dude? but again, I don't know. Maybe I've forgotten all the characters in it. Maybe he's a genuine character in Asterix, and that's maybe the whole point of it. Maybe he's supposed to be British, and that's the whole point. I can't remember.
He's the character from the comics, but I cannot speak
Right.
to his appearance, how accurately he was portrayed in the game. But the merchant character, who I suppose is sort of similar, exists in the comics.
But that was funny anyway. Like it wasn't obviously wasn't annoying.
On the subject of Romastered version, which again we're not really talking about in particular, but interestingly enough, I found that the indicator for the enemy attack, I preferred more the original over the remastered version because it felt more diegetic.
So I didn't actually notice that part. If I go back and play it again, I'm going to look out for it. But I have to say that I get the remastered version. It does everything looks smooth, and the lighting's obviously different. The polygon count is much higher. The texture detail is much sharper. I don't know. I think the game has stood a test of the time in its art because it does still look pretty good compared to the remastered version. And you can switch between the two, and sometimes you don't even notice the difference. I mean, you do, but because what's funny is that when you load the game, I think by default it loads the game into the remastered graphics.
Yes.
So when we were making a decision about we should play, we were alternating levels on which to play in old graphics, which to play in new. I might be playing the one I decided to play in the old graphics, but I would load up a game, it'd be in new graphics. It would take me a good couple of minutes before I realized I was in and I go, oh shit, I got to switch back, which is either says to me that the remastered version was a bit shit or that the old version was a bit better. And to be honest, I think it's the old version was a bit better because there's nothing, it's not a bad remaster. I don't think. I think it served its purpose. I mean, they basically made smoother models and upped the texture detail, and it's also a cartoon-like game. So there's only so much you do with that anyway.
I think most importantly, they made it run on modern gen hardware.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's not really about the graphics in this case, right? It's the fact that it runs on modern gen. I did have a bit of a gripe with controllers, but that might have been my system because for some reason it wouldn't, when I started the game, it would not understand my PlayStation 5 wireless controller. It was in a PC. This should be pretty standard on Windows 10 nowadays, but it did understand my Xbox One controller. That makes a bit more sense because it's a Microsoft controller running on Windows. I think I tried it in Bluetooth and it didn't work, but again, it just might be my system, so I'm not sure whether that's it.
Well, Steam shows you the icon that the game does not support a controller.
Yeah, that's weird. That's so weird. Why would a game like this not support a controller? Like, that's so odd.
But I played it with the wired controller and it was fine. Absolutely fine.
Yeah, the remastered stuff was an odd one, really, because I think, to be honest, I might have even preferred playing it in the original graphics, even though I've never played it before, ever. So I have no nostalgia for it, no fond memories of it.
Well, great. Fantastic. Shall we get to business then?
You mean the tier list?
Yeah.
What tier is it going to be?
Well, I'll let you go first.
When I started this game, I was going to put it in D.
No way. No way.
I was like, fuck this.
No way.
But I'm not. But I certainly can't put it S.
Okay.
And I'm not even sure in good conscience I could put it A.
But think about in the context of its time, though. Why wouldn't you put it as A?
I got frustrated with it, and it's quite simple. But I do understand, that the combat isn't as simple as I thought it was.
But is it a bad thing, it being simple?
It was more the repetition, I think. I think that's when simplicity goes a bit bad, is when it feels repetitive.
Right.
I'm going to give it B.
So I think we'll have to go by average again, because I think it is undisputed S tier.
Wow.
Not even, and I'm not even joking for a second.
Wow.
I think by far it is the most coherent game that we've played, the most rid of broken things that previous games featured. It's by far the game that actually has some depth and complexity to its mechanics. And yeah, so I think, yeah, I don't know. When I think about playing it back in the day, I only had fond memories of it. Playing it now, I found it much easier than I did originally, because when I played it originally, I remember that it wasn't easy for me. Now I sort of blasted through it, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, again, if this game was released nowadays, obviously wouldn't do well because of the things that we talked about with helmets and with repetition, which I do not disagree with in the slightest. But in the context of the game that is made in 2003, I think objectively it's so far, and obviously there will be more games that will encounter. But my take is so far S tier. Because we're going by votes, we're going to put it in A and leave it there.
Wow. The first A grade.
Yeah.
And it's like none of the big profile games. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So I think we should also talk about what we'll be doing next time.
I wanted to play something that was a little bit closer to home for you. I actually would be really excited about playing Deus Ex, the original game.
The good thing about Deus Ex is unlike Thief, because it's made by a lot of the same guys, it is very clear about the various different routes you can take to achieve an objective. So you can actually take an objective in different ways with Deus Ex. That sounds good. That sounds good.
Fantastic. Well, for anyone who's still listening and or watching, thank you very much. We do really appreciate, and would like to invite you to engage with us and let us know what you think and what you'd want us to play next. Bye.